All right, 10Cs, let's get started. All right, so last lesson, okay, is we're going to write some more equations of lines, okay, but we're going to use the information that we learned last class about parallel and perpendicular lines, because so far I've asked you guys to write equations of lines where either I gave you the slope and a point, do you guys remember those? Or I gave you 2 points, right, and I asked you to write the equation. Or I literally gave you a graph and you could take everything off of there, okay? Or I gave you the slope and the point, slope and the y-intercept. So this would just be now one other type. Whoopsie, sorry. Turn the lights on, not off. There you go. So I will be giving you questions where I actually now give you an equation, right? A linear equation already. And I'll ask you to build an equation that either runs parallel to the given equation already or perpendicular to the given equation already. So then you guys use your knowledge of slope. That's all you're using that equation for, okay, is to get the slope that you need. Because that's the only thing that you're using or has in common. So if it's parallel, do they have the same slope? That's all you're using the first equation for, okay? If I say they're perpendicular, right. Negative and reciprocal, that's all you're using the first equation for. You're using it for nothing else other than slope information, right? Slope information comes from the equation that you're given. That's it. Once you get it, you discard the first equation. You don't use it again, okay? Because you're building something that's going to either run parallel to it or perpendicular. I'm not going to have you graph both of them. I just want you to build another equation that if you were to graph it, it would run parallel or perpendicular, depending on the question that you're given. So this one says, term the equation of each line with the given information. Write your equations in slope-intercept form. Okay. Could I change that last sentence and say, write your equations in general form? Yeah. But if I do that, do you still have to get it to y equals mx plus b first? Yeah, you're doing that regardless. Okay. You can't just write general form from scratch. You have to use either slope point or y equals mx plus b first to write your equation how you were taught. And then general form comes after, if I make you do that. Because did I make you guys do that in some of your homework questions? Yeah, there was a whole page where I asked you to write the equation in both forms. Ooh. Did you? Where did it go? You can grab, oh, it's right here. It's all good. Yeah, I thought it went under his chart too. You're welcome. All right. So the first one, we want to build an equation that's parallel to 2x minus 3 and contains the point negative 4, 5. So for A and B, I'm being very nice because am I giving the equation and rearranged already for you? So there's not a lot of work. You can literally use your eyeballs to get your slope, okay? And zero math incorporated, right? So if I want parallel, that means we're using exactly the same slope. So parallel means same slope. So therefore, m is going to equal 2. That's all we're using that for. Once we grab that, you take it and discard it. You never look at that again, okay? Because again, it's a line. The line we want now has a slope of 2 because it's parallel. That is now gone. Now we take our point and write the equation. So we're missing our y-intercept. So maybe what I'll do, guys, just because I'm not sure until you guys write your quiz, how many prefer y equals mx plus b and how many people prefer point slope. So I'll just keep alternating. Your notes, if you already know you prefer one method or the other, can you just make your own notes and not follow me? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to use y equals mx plus b for this one. Okay. I prefer that method, period, but again, actually that's not true. Depending on the question is which I prefer. But I would say 85% of the time I use y equals mx plus b. Right, so if I use y equals mx plus b formula, so I'm going to write my formula down, then you're using it to solve for b. Right, so then you would grab your negative 4, negative 5, put that in for x and y, and then the 2 is going in for m. So then the 2 goes in for m. M times x, so x is minus 4 plus b So that's going to give me negative 8 plus b, and then I can do one step and solve for b. So I'm going to add 8 to both sides. So now I'm looking at 3 equals b. Now I have m, I have b. Now I can write an equation in terms of x and y. So whenever you're finished, it should be an equation that you could type into your calculator and graph it. So to do that, it needs to have an x in it, and it has to have a y in it. That is finished. Okay. So that's one of the methods on how to write equations. So like I said, if you prefer the other one, you don't have to write those notes. If you already are locked in at one form and you feel like you're going to use that form every time, fill your boots. I don't care. Right. But like I said, I'll do a couple of each so you guys can remember and decide. So any questions, guys, with that? So did I really teach you anything new today? No, I'm just making you guys use the knowledge that you've learned already to apply it to one more thing, right? You've already learned how to write equations. It's just I didn't make you grab the slope from an existing equation before. So that's kind of the new piece. But you already have the knowledge of parallel and perpendicular slopes. So next one, keyword is perpendicular. So again, I'm nice because I rearranged the equation for you. So if we're doing perpendicular, that means the slopes are negative reciprocal. So what do I need to do with that 5 over 2? Right, reciprocate it and throw a negative. So now my m is no longer going to be 5 over 2. It's going to be 2 over 5 with a negative. As soon as you grab that, we don't look at that anymore. That's the only use we have for that equation. Okay. All right. So then, now we have a point. So I'm going to change it up and do slope point form this time. So then we'll have y2 minus y1. And again, these would be on your formula sheet. You don't have to memorize them. But again, is this just technically your slope formula rearranged? Yes. So if you like this formula, and again, if you don't like this formula, are you now not looking at me and using the other technique? Yeah, if you know you do not like this, for sure, don't do this. Go back and do exactly what we did up here, right? And solve for b using that, okay? But I like changing it up, so away I go. So if I do this, I have to substitute my y in. I have to substitute my x in. I like putting it in for the second term. And then I have to substitute my slope in. So y minus 1 equals over 5, x minus a minus. So you guys okay if you're using this method, a minus is a plus 10? So now I do have to multiply that in. So negative 2 over 5, x minus 4. So far so good. And then what would I do with that? Minus 1? Plus 1. So I just find with this form, not that I'm trying to convince you one way or the other, it's just this form I find has way more room for error, right, with integers is all. So then we'll get negative 2x minus 4 plus 1 is minus 3. Did anybody use the other method? Yeah. Did you guys get exactly the same thing? With way less headache? Yes. Yeah, I won't argue that. Not at all. Okay. So again, regardless, even on your quiz coming up right next week, I'm not forcing you. As long as you can get to y equals negative 2x minus 3. No, sorry, not minus 2x. Minus 2x over 5 minus 3. any method, we're golden. Okay. All right, so the first two are nice, right? Those are a little quicker because I didn't make you do any work on the original equation, okay? So with this one, do I have a tiny bit of work before I can do slope? What's wrong, girls? What's wrong? Okay. So C, what do we have to do first? Right, you do need to simplify that equation because you cannot just tell me the slope is 3. That's a no-no, okay? So that has to be rearranged first because the slope is not 3, because the only way the slope would be 3 is if that was already rearranged for y equals, right, with a coefficient of 1 on it. Y does not have a coefficient on 1 on it, and it's not isolated by itself. So you need to do that. So I'm going to move the 3x. So then I'm going to get a 4y equals negative 3x plus 12. We should have had lots of practice doing this already. Do you guys agree that you had a whole page of rearranging for y equals at the very beginning of the chapter? Yes, so lots of practice already, so this should not be an issue, rearranging. Am I done? No. So one more step. Y has a coefficient of 4 on it. That's not okay. So divide whatever the coefficient is off. So y equals negative 3 over 4x plus 3. And again, I could care less about what the y-intercept of this original equation. All I care about is the slope. So what word are we looking at again? Parallel. So since it's parallel, we know that we are using the same slope. So therefore, m is going to equal negative 3 over 4. Now, if I say the x-intercept is 8, guys, are we confused with that? Right, so some are. So just think, is an x-intercept still a point? Right, it's not b though. We all agree with that? We can't just put 8 in for b, okay? But the x-intercept, that's my way of seeing if you guys can make the connection. X-intercept is still a point, so you just have to make the connection that x-intercept is still the same thing as 8, 0. All that work we did with x and y-intercepts, we know that an x-intercept is a point where y equals 0. If I give you a y-intercept, it's not kind of a... If I give you the y-intercept, you actually finished? Yeah, and I will. I could say the y-intercept is 8. If that was the case, then I wouldn't have any solving to do for b. I'd be finished. I'd put the negative 3 over 4 in for m, and I would put the value of my y-intercept in for b. But that's not the case here. Make the connection. X-intercept is still a point. So then technically, are we doing the same thing as we did in the first one and the second one? Yeah, so your choice. I'm going to go back to y equals mx plus b now. I'm going to just keep alternating. So if I write it using this formula now, because again, we need slope and we need y-intercept. So x-intercept is still a point. So my x value, yes, is 8, but my y value is 0. So put your values in. So negative 3 over 4 times 8 plus b, 0 equals, so negative 6 plus b, so b is going to equal 6. So we have m, we have b, boom, write the equation. So my equation is y equals negative 3 over 4. We talked about this before, but remember, please don't do this. Okay, I had that conversation already. It has to have an x and a y. You have a formula. When you write your equation, m goes in and b goes in, right? The x and y is your template because they're very different equations. Okay, the x actually is your, right, constant change, right? So if you don't put an x there, you're technically just positive 6.25. Y equals 6.25. That's the equation you're graphing, okay, which is not the same thing as y equals negative 3/4 x. So it changes depending on what x is, right? Plus 6. So that would be your final answer. All right, so last little one here. So again, this is exactly the same as this question, right? I'm giving you an equation and a point. The only reason why the last question is a little bit more difficult is I'm making you rearrange the equation. And believe it or not, guys, if you're not careful, could you make an integer mistake? Yes, so please, 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 please be cautious. You guys know how to move things over the equal to sign. So please make sure your integer work, right, is spot on. So what I mean by that, you have a choice here. You can move two terms completely, or you can move one, right? Because right now everything's on one side. So guess what I want to move? Well, I want to move one term. So if I want to move one term, I'm going to move the y. Because I want to isolate y. Your whole goal, guys, is to isolate y. So I rather do it in less steps. So if I do that, it's just weird taking it to that side and making it a negative. But we should be able to be okay with that. So now we have 3x plus 10 equals negative 2y. And then now everything's going to be divided by negative 2. So we have negative 3 over 2x minus, because again, please make sure, top's positive, bottom's negative. So positive divided by a negative is a negative. Top's positive, bottom's negative. So positive divided by a negative is a negative. Not that we need that number. Okay, the only number we're looking at is the slope. Right, so therefore, m is going to equal? Good. 2 over, just 2 over 3, you betcha. Because the original is negative, so we know that the perpendicular has to be positive, and we reciprocate. So flip away, and then now back to writing the equation. Right. So just because I promised I was going to keep flipping, I will use the other formula now. But I'll stop talking so I don't confuse you. If you're using y equals mx plus b, you aren't hearing me, because are we doing different things? Yeah, we're doing different things. Okay, so I'll just do it, and then if you're using this, you can just look up when you're done to make sure we're good. And even if you're using the other formula, you still look up when you're done, because we should still have the same answer. All right, so are we good with y equals 2 over 3x minus 5? We're good. So again, this is nice practice, because it still makes us practice writing our equations. Because in the end, guys, are we still doing the same work as we did when we first started writing equations? Yeah, we're doing exactly the same work. It's just how we're getting our slope is different, right? That's it. So what I want you guys to do, obviously, is go to your assignment booklet, do this lesson, okay? And once this lesson is done, come see me. And you do have a little summative equation sheet that you can do to hand in to me, just to make sure I can see that you're okay before your quiz.